Rogue in Season of Discovery is quite good in PvP and has a few builds you can run. And I'm going to try to go over all of them and show all the talents or gear you might need depending on the spec you choose. And those specs are going to revolve around Backstab, Sinister Strike, or maybe even Saber Slash or Mutilate if you want to try those out. But in general, I think Backstab and Sinister Strike are going to outperform Saber Slash and Mutilate in PvP. So let's go ahead and start with the Sinister Strike build, which we have here, which is going to be mainly focused around doing raw damage, kind of like you're doing a PvE encounter, which is why the talents I'm using are actually exactly the same as when I do PvP, or sorry, PvE. The only real thing I'd like to fluctuate here is if you wanted to take points out of Improved Slice and Dice here, which you probably should for PvP, and you can either put them into Improved Eviscerate or maybe Lethality. But in general, because I don't like respeccing and I'm broke boy, I prefer just to run the normal PvE DPS spec. That way I'm not spending gold every week trying to do PvP and then respec for the dungeon, or the raid, I mean. And it makes it really easy. And the 3 points in Improved Eviscerate or Lethality aren't going to be that huge because most of the damage you're doing are going to be from your auto attacks and your Sinister Strike in PvP. And to combo that with the ruins, the ones you're going to want to run are here at the bottom: Quick Draw, Shadow Strike, and Between the Eyes. And there's really nothing you can really change here. The only thing you might want to change is Quick Draw. You can change to, sorry, not Quick Draw, I believe it is Shadow Strike. You can change to Saber Slash, which again, because I have raid weapons, I don't really need the extra damage. I prefer the utility of having Shadow Strike because I hate being kited. And whenever you're getting into a fight with a hunter, even a priest or mage, anything that can crowd control you and get distance from you, they can kite you. So what you're going to want to do is you can vanish Shadow Strike on top of them and get back on the target. And you get a lot of utility out of having Shadow Strike. So to me, unless my weapons are complete dog shit, I would always run Shadow Strike over Saber Slash. And now we could talk about the Backstab build. And the Backstab build is going to be what you have here. I prefer to have Improved Sinister Strike because if you're not able to get behind the target, if you're slowed or something, being able to use less energy with a Sinister Strike is going to be helpful. And then you go Improve Backstab, 2 and hit, and that way you can unlock Improved Sprint. And the last points that I put here into Opportunity, you can actually take out if you would like. You can put them in Endurance, and then put the last 2 into Opportunity, or if you feel like it, you can put the last 2 into Master of Deception. However, because I like more damage and because a lot of the people you're fighting are going to have high armor, I prefer just to have the points in Opportunity. Of course, you will lose the utility of having a 3.5 minute cooldown sprint because you lack endurance. But even still, I do like having Opportunity for extra damage. But the build you can do can vary if you want to have endurance or Master of Deception, anything you want there. And the ruins are going to be exactly the same as the Sinister Strike build, but because we're using Backstab, we're not going to use Quick Draw, we're going to use Slaughter of Shadows. And you can do the exact same build if you're running with Mutilate. However, again, if you're going to want to run with Mutilate, you're going to lose utility, just like if you were to run Saber Slash, where you would be able to run Quick Draw and then Mutilate. But again, you're going to be losing out on Shadow Strike, meaning you can get kited more often. And you won't have the Vanish Shadow Strike gap closer, kind of like a warrior would if they were charging. You're going to lack that gap closer. So there's going to be a lot of times if you're running Mutilate where you can't get back onto the target and you just simply die because we lack prep, we lack blind, we lack stun locks, and because of that we're more likely to be kited. So beware of that. You can try Mutilate. I don't think you should run Mutilate. I think you should always run Backstab over it, but you can try it out if you would like. But those are going to be the talents for each spec. Now we can actually talk about the gear here, and I have it planned out here. And just like with PvE, where a lot of the gear you want is going to be coming from the raid. As you can see here, we're going to want the 3-tier set, which is going to be the Twilight Slayer's Cowl, the Twilight Slayer's Tunic, and the Twilight Slayer's Foot Pads. And then the other gear you have is in general going to have high stamina. So things that you might want in the raid, like just pure strength and agility, I'm not taking. I'm going to have gear with stamina on it. So we have the glowing fetish amulet, The Sentinel Pauldrons, which have 10 stamina on them, which are really good. The Sergeant's Cloak, which has a ton of stats, which are really nice. The Bindings of Syracuse, which have high armor and high stamina, a little bit of AP mixed in there. Of course, you gotta have the Epic Gloves, which are basically the best you can get in the entire game. So if you want, you can get them if you want to make them as a leather worker. And a quick note, you actually don't need to be a skinner to be a leather worker, because leather is really cheap on the auction house, and you can get to level 100 with leatherworking extremely fast without dropping like even a gold, and then you can craft the gloves pretty easily. Then we have the Honed Darkwater Tower, which if you're running Sinister Strike, then you would get this one. If you're not and you're running Backstab, then you can run the Chipped Bite of Syracuse, and if you're running Mutilate, you can run the Chipped Bite and Meteor Shard. If you're not like me, I'm using Gusting Wind on the offhand, which is another raid weapon. Cord of Aquanus, high stamina, high agility, great item. The Troll's Bane leggings, which you can replace with the leggings of the Fang if you don't want to buy those. That's what I'm currently using, are the leggings of the Fang. The tier set item, of course. Protector's Band, which you get from Ashenvale Honored Rep, I believe. The Seal of Rin, which you get from the Stockades quest line. Avenger's Void Pearl, which is another quest item from the final boss of the raid. And finally, the Insignia of the Alliance, which you buy from a PvP vendor when you're rank 2. And then the only real weapon you can get that's valuable in any way is the gun with 6 agility on it from the raid. And that is going to be the gear set you go for. Now, obviously, this is like best case scenario. You've been raiding every lockout and you're getting a lot of gear. If you're not at this point, what you can do is find gear that has Of the Monkey on it, that's near level 25, and any gear that has stamina on it. Before I got a lot of raid items, I had, of course, Of the Monkey, but don't undervalue just pure stamina items, because having a lot of HP is really important in PvP and might actually be better than just having pure damage stats. And outside of that, that is going to be my main build and gear for PvP in Phase 1. And now let's actually talk about how to play Rogue in PvP. And as you can imagine, because we lack a lot of our kit, it's going to be pretty straightforward. Because in essence, we're a glorified warrior at the moment. We just do a lot of damage and we don't have a lot of utility because we're level 25. So what you'll be doing is you're going to be running double crippling poison unless you're grouped with a feral druid or a shaman who has Wind Fury active, in which case you don't want to put anything on the main hand. You can just put crippling on the offhand. Whenever you're engaging into a fight with another player, you can use Shadow Strike to close a gap on them if you would like. But in general, if you have time, you're going to want to use Garrote if you're running the Sinister Strike build, or Ambush with a Dagger build, because it'll give you a lot of opening damage for very little energy, and it's very good for winning a fight if you can do it like that. Then you want to do the complex rotation of spamming Sinister Strike or Backstab over and over and over again, because that is where most of our damage is going to come from. And now for the finishers, if you're in a BG, like a pre-made Warsong Gulch, where there's a lot of players and the fights are very extended, I actually will go for a 5-point slice and dice, especially because I run with the normal PvE build that has improved slice and dice, because it'll allow me just to DPS race the enemy faction until I win the fight. But if you're fighting somebody with high armor or you're in a 1v1 situation, you could actually try to go for a bleed, because bleeds aren't reduced by armor, so a 5-point rupture on a single target is actually quite good as well. And the last thing you're going to want to take notice of is you're going to want to save kick for penance whenever you fight priests, because they're super OP and everybody's playing one at the moment pretty much. So yeah, whenever you're fighting a caster, always try to pull energy a little bit. That way you have time to kick them and you don't let them get a heal off. And then other than that, all the runes we have with Shadow Strike, Quick Draw, and Between the Eyes, you're going to want to use those to close the gap or lock down a target without having to blow a 5-minute cooldown like a rogue normally would have to. So yeah, it's really that simple. We're a very gear dependent class right now, but if your gear is good and you have some raid gear, then go out there in PvP and just stick onto the enemies like a raid boss and kill them and DPS them down.